Let's take a spin around the raw interface. Now to do that, we need to open up an image. So we're going to go into the exercise files for this particular chapter. If you went into chapter 1, I showed you what I did. I put all of the exercise files for all of the lessons in this series in exercise files in my favorites. And we are in chapter 6, and we will open them up. Those are the ones we're going to use. Let's go ahead and pick one of these up. Just say this one, doesn't matter. And it will open it up in Camera Raw because it is a raw image. Now, the raw plugin really hasn't changed that much. There are a couple of new kind of cool things, but basically it looks about the same as it did in the last version. What you have over here, this button, if you click it, will take you into full screen. If you want your whole screen full with raw, that's fine. You do have the preview button here where you can turn that on and off and change the preview. Here's all these different buttons here that can help us out. For example, you have a zoom tool. I think we all know what that does. You have a hand tool that will move the item for you. This is for white point. This one is for color sampling. If you click and hold on this one, you have different options that you can choose. You have a cropping tool. You then have a straightening tool. This button over here is kind of neat. When you click it, it's a spot removal tool. And it allows you to get rid of spots. And you'll notice that when I selected that tool, things changed over here. A lot of times when you click on these tools, it's going to change what you see over there. You've got a red eye removal tool that works great. You have an adjustments brush where you can literally paint adjustments onto the image. You have a tool here that allows you to create a graduated filter for an effect. This button, if you click it, allows you to go back into your Camera Raw preferences if you want to change them. And of course, we can rotate the image with these two right here. Now down here, we have a button that allows us to change the size. Of course, we could do that with the zoom tool, or we could click these buttons right here if there's some reason why we want to enlarge or make it smaller. And you can always use the shortcut, which is the Command key with the plus and the minus keys on your 10 key. There's a lot of different ways we can do that. Over here, this is one of the most important areas you're going to work in, and it's called a histogram. And when we're adjusting an image, we'll be looking at the histogram to help us understand what's going on with the image. Let me go back over here and just pick up, say, the hand tool. Because you've got a lot of options over here that are basic. These are the basic adjustments to an image. Everything from the color temperature to the exposure to the contrast, down here to clarity, vibrance, and saturation. We'll work with these in a minute, another lesson. Over here you've got curves. You have over here detail, as in sharpening and noise reduction. You have a button here for hue, saturation, and lightness, or changing and converting an image into grayscale. Does a good job of it too. This button right here is for split toning, and I'll explain that when we get to it. You can actually split the image in terms of toning features. This button right here gives you lens correction. If it's a lens that's recognized, that's a really nice thing to have. It corrects based on the lens's aberrations. You've got FX here for grain and vignetting. Here's a button to adjust for your camera. Now right now mine says it's Adobe Standard, but this image was shot with a D2X, and I actually have the ability to change the color here based on that camera. What that does for you, it gives you a very good base to start from. Now I've got a D3 too, and if actually that image were D3, you'd see option modes for D3. So you've got all these different options that we can work through. This area is blank, but basically what it is presets. Now presets are, I did something to the image, I really like what I did to this image, and I want to apply it to another image, but it might be next week. You can make a preset, we'll do that. The last one is snapshots. Let me show you how that works. A snapshot is a state of the image. It's not a preset. It's just looking at the image based on how you've changed it. So we could come down here and click the new button. I usually do this when I start out, and this would be like my basic. I always start out with a basic. And just real quick, say we come over to our white balance or our temperature exposure, and we do something to the image. We change it. Maybe we go into, let's go here, and maybe change a little on split toning on highlights and saturation. Let's go back over here again, and let's go down here. We're just playing right now. Kind of pull down the vibrance. All right, I like this, but it's changed the original. If I come here again and click that button and make another one, we could call this Mod 1. Anytime we want to see the original, we can click here and we can decide if we like it. The one thing to remember that is kind of important is we are dealing with non-destructive editing. So even though I have these snapshots, I really don't need them to get back to the original image. One more area down here, and to me this is an important one. This is, if you click it, the workflow options. We are dealing with a color space right here first. I do like to use ProPhoto RGB. That's relatively new, but I think it's a good workspace to be in. We can change the depth, and I would recommend changing that to 16-bit. Remember, raw images have a lot of stuff, trillions of colors, but you're not going to get to them unless you change that option. And when you change these options, they're there until you change them again for any image. Here is the standard size for the image in a Nikon D2XS, 12.2. But I can increase or decrease the size of the image if I choose. But you're not really getting more information as if your camera was suddenly able to make a 25 megapixel image. But it does help if you're planning on making these images bigger to make the change here. I'm going to leave that right there. Down here, we can change the resolution. And I'm not a big fan of sharpening. I like to do that myself, so I usually leave that one off. And finally, when you do open the image in Photoshop, you can open it as what's called a smart object, which gives you a lot of control over the image, even in Photoshop, in a non-destructive way. But I would suggest here, at least out of all of these options, you do want to change that to 16-bit. Click OK, and we're set to go. On to the next.